station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is station. We're ready for the event.
JSC PAO, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Brandy Dean from JSC PAO. How do you hear me?
Hi, Brandy. Great to hear from you. We hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Jessica, Meir, Andrew Morgan, and Chris Cassidy, it's great to see you all on orbit together, and we appreciate you making time for this today. If you have any opening remarks, we can start with those, and then we'll jump into questions.
I think, first of all, we would all like to just give our thanks to the doctors, the nurses, all of the medical personnel, police officers, firefighters, really everybody that is on the front lines down there doing their best and really sacrificing their own lives, putting their lives on the line for all of the human race down there. We give our profound thanks and heartfelt thanks to all of them, and especially since we're up here unable to really contribute to the fight. So thank you very much. Your efforts are appreciated.
Thank you so much for that. We'll get started on questions now. For participants, please press *1 to let me know you have a question and *2 to withdraw your question if needed. We are operating a little differently than usual, so we will see how this goes. But let's start with Chris Davenport from the Washington Post.
Taking the time, it's Chris Davenport from the Washington Post. I wonder, since we're all living under quarantine, if you have any advice for people who are been cooped up in small places. And for Chris Cassidy specifically, I wonder if you could talk about what the launch was like for you without having, your family and all that celebration for the usual send-off. Thanks, guys.
Hi, Chris. Nice to talk to you again. I'll leave the advice part to my colleagues that have been here for 6 months, and I'll answer the part about what was the launch like. I can tell you one thing: no matter how many times you ride on a rocket to space, it never gets old. Or I know how to do this. It is amazing from the moment you step off the bus, you climb into an elevator, you ride this elevator knowing that you're right next to this gigantic monster with so much thrust in it. It's just incredible. And then you strap in, and the thing lights off, and you just feel this immense power pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. And there's some crazy events that happen in there where the staging occurs, and that shakes the whole thing, different acceleration profiles. And then finally the engine's cut off, and you're strapped in and not moving anywhere, but you feel like you're kind of tumbling around head over heels until your brain settles out and kind of figures out what the situation is. So the ride was amazing. The spacecraft performed perfectly, and then my first glimpse of these guys was at maybe 5 kilometers or something away, and I could see this little lit-up star in front of us, and that's where my new home was going to be. So I'll let these guys talk about advice for others in quarantine.
Yeah, I would say that living in isolation is something that we're very good at, and I know that everyone on Earth is experiencing that in a new way right now. I think one of the most important things is to live by a routine. That's what we do up here. We have a schedule, and we follow it to the T and make sure that we're the most efficient and most effective with our time. Our exercise, our personal hygiene, our sleep, everything is scheduled out. So sticking to a schedule is very important. And then I think another aspect that we practice regularly up here that applies very well to the situation on Earth right now is being a good crewmate and thinking about how your actions affect the actions of others. It's something we do all the time up here, and constantly evaluating to make sure that we're respectful of others at all times, and that can be very tough to do when you're living for a long time in close quarters.
Okay, great. Next, we are going to go to Bill Harwood with CBS.
A quick question for Jessica. Since you launched, obviously all of this has happened after you left the planet. I'm just wondering what you're hearing from family and friends about how life is going on Earth, what you're looking forward to coming back to Earth, and what maybe you're concerned about. Kind of your whole picture of all this from space, and soon you're going to be walking on Earth. Thanks.
Yeah, Drew and I have spent a lot of time talking about that. It is quite surreal for us to see this whole situation unfolding on the planet below. We can tell you that the Earth still looks just as stunning as always from up here, so it's difficult to believe all the changes that have taken place since both of us have been up here. I think for me, it'll still be nice to go back and to see some familiar places and some familiar faces. It certainly will be very difficult for me to not be able to give some hugs to my family and friends. That's something, after being up here for 7 months and being the type of person that I am, it's going to be difficult for me to do that, but I know that'll be part of the game for a while. We were just talking about that before this conference. I think that I will actually feel more isolated on the Earth than I did up here, just because that's part of our expected routine up here, and we're so busy with so many other amazing pursuits, and we have this incredible vantage point of the Earth below that we don't really feel as much of that isolation when you're back in your homes, and the kind of isolation that everybody is dealing with right now, and you can see all of those things or all of those people, but you just can't do anything with them or experience them at all. I think that makes it even more difficult. So we'll see how it goes and how I adjust, but it will of course be wonderful to see some family and friends, at least virtually and from a distance for now.
Next up, Joey Roulette from Reuters.
Hey, thanks so much for doing this. For everyone, I just wanted to ask, the first commercial crew vehicle is carrying humans to the ISS this summer. What does that mean for the space arena, and specifically, what will you all on the ISS be doing to prepare for the new vehicle's visit? And then I had one other for Chris Cassidy. This isn't your first time in space. Does this mission on the ISS feel any different, knowing we down on Earth are in a pandemic? Thanks.
Yeah, this mission it does feel different. I will tell you, leaving Earth amidst the global crisis and the shutdown, worldwide quarantine, we were commenting before we launched that we knew as a crew we were going to be in quarantine about 9 months ago or a year ago, those exact weeks, but we didn't know the whole rest of the world was going to join us, and so that makes it hard. And leaving all that behind, my heart goes out to everybody who's dealing with it, because I would just only spend a few weeks on Earth during that period, but I know, and that was enough time to know that it's really, really challenging for in many ways, and it's often the second and third order effects of the situation that I found to be really unexpected, like what it does to kids in schools and sports and graduations and people leaving college looking for their future job, and it just lots of things that you wouldn't expect when we just say at face value we're going to start quarantine now. And then your first question related to commercial crew, these guys are leaving a couple weeks, so they don't have any chance of seeing a commercial crew, unfortunately. And for me, it's looking like my friends Bob and Doug will arrive on SpaceX towards the end of May, maybe into June, if things go well. And that's a huge thing for us as a nation and for the international partnership on the space station. Right now, we only can get to space on a Russian rocket, which it's always good to have redundancies in any kind of system that you have. And we're really excited to have an alternate way to get back to the space station and launch from Florida. And then on a personal level, I'll be excited to see Bob and Doug. I've known them for many years. We work together. They're friends and with their families as well. And so it'll be really special to have such a historic moment for our nation and such a cool personal event for me, greeting them at the hatch.
Reminder to participants on the phone to press *1 if you have a question. Next up, we're going to go to Brian Owens from Nature Magazine.
Hi, this is a question for Chris in particular. Given the pandemic that we have going on, could you maybe talk about the pre-flight precautions that you took to make sure you weren't bringing the virus up, and whether it was any different this time than in previous launches?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about that. I left Houston at the end of February, and if you remember the timing, it was when there was a discussion in China, but it really hadn't crept into the American news cycle and the American discussions, at least at the big levels, and we knew that it was something that the whole world was going to be concerned with. So I remember walking off the airplane in Moscow and wondering if there was going to be testing, and there were some medical personnel there, but the process of going through customs was exactly the same as normal. And then just a couple days later, I did get the opportunity, my wife and I spend some time in Moscow in those first couple days, and then shortly after that, it was no leaving the base where we do all of our training, which is about 30 miles outside of Moscow. So from the first week of March until launch, I did not come in contact with anyone other than those immediate people involved with the launch preparation, and those people were also in the same quarantine as I was. So, and we were really strict about it. And normally when you get to Baikonur, there's press conferences and bosses, managers from all the space cooperation businesses and agencies, and none of those people were allowed into the building. Even any media or any press state commissions that we had were all done just like we're doing now with a video camera. So there was virtually no interaction between us as a crew and the outside population. Now, anything's possible. We know lots of cases where people have thought they were good to go, but it snuck into their world. But I really think that's almost 0% chance for our crew.
Okay, next we're going to go to Chelsea Goad from Space.com.
Hi, thank you guys so much for taking questions. I really appreciate it. This weekend, we're coming up on a historic anniversary, the 50th anniversary of Apollo 13, and being astronauts in an especially unusual situation with the pandemic, I'm curious kind of what lessons you as astronauts today draw from Apollo 13 and those astronauts who really prevailed in extraordinarily unusual circumstances.
Yeah, thanks for your question, because I think that's a really interesting comparison and contrast. 50 years ago, when Apollo 13, they had a crisis in space, and the flight control team, mission control on the ground prevailed through their ingenuity, their professionalism, and brought the crew home safely. And now Jessica and I are going to land. We're on board here during the Apollo, the anniversary of Apollo 13. We're going to return to Earth. I believe that our landing date corresponds with the landing date of Apollo 13. And once again, now there's a crisis, and the crisis is on Earth. And once again, the mission control centers, the flight control team are going to bring us home safely. And they have been affected by this just the same as everyone. It's changed the way that mission control operations worked. They're actually doing handover between shifts, between two different rooms to minimize the contact, but yet here they are persevering, and through their ingenuity and their professionalism, they're going to return us to Earth safely, just like their predecessors did 50 years ago.
Thanks, Drew. Next, we're going to go to Kira Mirza from the Red Bulletin.
Hello. Thank you very much for taking my question. I'd like to ask, how can we learn and adapt from the challenges we have been given at this current time in a positive way for the Earth and humankind? Is there any positive and inspiring advice you can give us going forward?
Certainly, I hope that there are some positive outcomes of all of this. There are many, many terrible sides to what's happening right now, and I think we all recognize that. But what we can do is to try to find the silver linings and the positive elements. One of those that some of my family and friends have been talking about back home is the connections that they've been able to foster with their loved ones. Some people have been reaching out to family members or more regularly corresponding with people than they were before this pandemic. So I think that it is bringing a little bit more of that innate human element out and reminding people of their priorities and reminding them of what is truly important. So hopefully we can take a little bit of that, cherish that, and move forward and continue to treat each other a little bit more humanely even after we come out of the other side of this pandemic. for us, adapting to change and unanticipated obstacles that we might encounter is really just a part of our everyday job. And that's one of the things that we do and try to select astronauts for and prepare astronauts for. I think the same now goes as a big challenge to all of those down on Earth to try to rise out of this from the other side, bringing something positive and taking something positive away from it. It is certainly a challenging thing to do, but I know that some of the positive stories that we've seen from some of the heroes on the front lines, for example, and some of the connections that people are having are really bringing some of that to light.
Thanks, Jessica. Next, we're going to go to Ken Rice from KDKA-TV in Pittsburgh.
Good morning. A question specifically for Colonel Morgan. I'm curious, how closely have you, as a physician, been able to follow what's happening on Earth? And what are your thoughts on what it's going to be like returning to a world that is so different than the one you left? And what message might you have for your family and friends back here in Western Pennsylvania?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd echo what Jessica has already said about just the sense of pride that we have in our first responders and medical professionals all across the world and at home in the U.S. that have risen to this occasion and are putting their lives on the line. As an emergency physician, I understand what it's like to be at the doorway of a hospital or a field hospital or the front lines of combat, and that's exactly the situation that physicians and first responders and healthcare workers are finding themselves in across the globe right now. And I'm very proud to be part of that profession, but I'll have to admit that there's even a little bit of guilt that I am as separated from it as I could be, and will only return to the middle of this in the next week. We all expect that the Earth changes. You know, in the 9 months that I've been up here, if there was no pandemic going on, the Earth had changed. You add this layer to it, and it's very hard to fathom. We're able to watch the news up here. Sometimes our news is a little bit delayed, and so as we're watching things, we're getting it through the eyes of the news, and we're talking to our friends and families back home, and trying to paint a picture, but it's just hard for us really to understand what has transpired and how life will be different for us when we return to the Earth. Speaking of friends and family, you know, my roots go very deep in Western Pennsylvania, back several generations, and that is what I have adopted as home. Even though I didn't grow up there, it is what I do consider home, and I've thought, you know, I've taken little pieces of who I am up here on the ISS over the last 9 months, and Western Pennsylvania came with me as well, so it's been a real pleasure, real honor to represent that part of the country, that part of Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area, with me up here on the ISS.
Okay, we're going to try and squeeze in one more. This one from Brad Rogers with WGME 13 Portland.
Well, my question is for the two Mainers. How are you guys both doing up there? And, you know, a lot of people here are watching in Maine. Any message for the people of Maine? And, Jessica, what are you going to miss most about space?
There are so many things that I'm going to miss. Probably the most is the view out of the cupola or any other window when we're looking down at this planet below with all of the people, everybody in Maine, everybody in the United States, everybody in the whole world, and everything that we've ever experienced down there. The feeling that that gives you as a human, it's quite difficult to put into words. To everybody in Maine, you know, Chris and I are so excited to be up here together. We know that it means a lot to people down there, and so it'll be only 8 short days of our overlap, but we plan to make the most of it. I'd like to thank everybody down there so much. You know, it really is, as trite as it may sound, it is a journey, and my journey started in Maine, in northern Maine, in a very small town called Caribou, as people know, and the support that I had there through my education, through my family and friends was really unparalleled, and I think really had a lot to do with where I ended up and being right here on the space station. So thank you to everybody. We are thinking of you constantly, and I know that we're very excited to be speaking to some more Mainers just next week.
And don't have a whole lot more to add than what Jessica eloquently said, but I was in contact with a lot of friends in my launch week, and that really made me, friends from Maine, and that really made me feel good and reminisce about the time I had as a young guy growing up there in Maine, and what I think fondly of in my hometown of York. We have some nice beaches there, and I picture that when we're flying over the country. I can picture the coast of Maine, the smell of the seashore and fresh mowed grass in the summertime along that same area. Smells are a thing we don't really get to enjoy up here so much. At least I think so. But I'm just so proud to be from Maine, and I say hi to everybody there. I know they're struggling with the quarantine just like the rest of the world is, and I just want to say thanks to everybody down there for supporting our mission, and we're excited to be here representing the state.
Thank you so much, Drew, Jessica, and Chris. We really appreciate you making time for this. That's going to be all the time that we have for questions today. But for those tuning in, be sure and come back at 1:20 p.m. Eastern on Monday when Chris and Jessica will be talking with students across their home state of Maine. You can watch that here on NASA TV, so we'll see you then. Thanks to everyone who participated.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes our event as we count down to 20 continuous years of humans living and working on the International Space Station.
Thank you to all participants. Station, we are now resuming operational audio communications.